My child, you passed the final test. I need you to hear this now before tomorrow arrives, because what I am about to reveal changes everything between us. Do not rush past these words. Do not skim them. Do not treat this moment as something you can return to later when life slows down. This is not a message meant for convenience. It is meant for clarity. You have just walked through something that reshaped you, even if you cannot yet explain how or why. On the surface, it may look like you simply survived another difficult season, another stretch of waiting, another quiet struggle that few people noticed and even fewer understood. But what you came through was not ordinary. It was a threshold. And before you step into what comes next, you need to understand what just happened. You do not yet realize the weight of what you carried. You do not yet see the strength that formed quietly while you were focused on simply getting through the day. And I will not let you step into tomorrow without knowing the truth, because tomorrow carries new weight, new responsibility, and a deeper closeness between us than you have known before. If you enter it without clarity, you will question yourself again. You will wonder if you are ready. You will doubt what I am doing. You will interpret invitation as pressure and growth as burden. I do not want that for you. I want you to move forward anchored, not guessing. Rooted, not bracing. So listen now with your whole heart, not with fear, not with skepticism, but with the quiet courage that has been growing inside you even when you didn't realize it was there. Stay with me. What I am about to say will reshape how you see your past, your faith, and your future. You have been looking back on your life and calling it struggle. You have been calling it delay. You have been calling it confusion, loss, endurance, survival. But you have not yet called it what it truly was. It was a test. Not a test designed to make you fail. Not a test meant to exhaust or punish you. But a test that revealed who you are when no one is watching. When nothing is guaranteed, when answers are slow, and when feelings are thin. You passed the final test not because you never doubted. Not because you were always strong. Not because you got everything right. You passed because you stayed. You stayed when walking away would have been easier. You stayed when hope felt fragile and prayer felt quiet. You stayed when effort felt heavy and progress felt invisible. You stayed honest. You stayed open. You stayed human. And that mattered more than you know. I watched you in moments when you felt unseen. I watched you when you questioned whether your effort mattered at all. I watched you choose integrity when shortcuts would have gone unnoticed. I watched you wrestle internally and still show up outwardly. I watched you resist bitterness when disappointment tried to take root. Those moments were not small. They were the measure. And you passed. You thought the test was about endurance alone, but it was also about trust. Could you trust me without reassurance? Could you trust me without progress you could point to? Could you trust me without applause, clarity, or immediate reward? You did not always feel confident, but you remained willing. And willingness is the doorway to growth. This cannot wait because something has changed between us now. Not distance but closeness. Not pressure but trust. Passing this test means I can speak to you differently. It means I can lead you more directly. It means I can entrust you with clarity that would have overwhelmed you before. You are not the same person you were when this season began. You are steadier. You are quieter inside. You are less driven by fear and more guided by awareness. The change did not happen overnight. It happened through every hard day you did not quit. You are standing on the edge of tomorrow thinking it will feel like yesterday. It will not. Tomorrow is not just another day. It is a continuation, but with new depth. And depth requires understanding. That is why I am speaking now, not later. If you wait, you will move forward without realizing how much you have grown. And you will underestimate yourself again. I do not want you to carry old doubt into a new season. Stay with me. Let these words settle. You have spent a long time bracing yourself, preparing for disappointment, guarding your expectations. You learned to protect yourself because hope once hurt you. That protection served a purpose. It got you through the test. But now it is time to loosen your grip, just enough, to receive what comes next. You passed the final test because when everything felt uncertain, you chose not to become someone you would not recognize. You did not harden. You did not lose compassion. You did not abandon truth just to feel safe. You adapted without losing your core. That is rare. That is readiness. This cannot wait because understanding must come before movement. If you move forward without knowing what you just came through, you will mislabel the next season. You will think you need to strive again, prove again, endure again. But something has shifted. And you need to know that before you take another step. I know part of you is tired of messages that promise change. I know part of you is cautious, whispering, "Don't believe too quickly." That caution once protected you, but right now, it is trying to keep you from seeing the truth. The truth is not dramatic. It is steady. It is calm. It says you are ready. What I am revealing changes everything between us because trust has been built. Not the loud kind of trust that boasts, but the quiet kind that stays. I can rely on you now in ways I could not before. Not because you are perfect, but because you are honest. Not because you are fearless, but because you are faithful in small, unseen ways. You have been waiting for a sign that things are different. This is that sign. Not fireworks, not noise. Understanding. Understanding that what you thought was survival was actually formation. What you thought was delay was actually preparation. What you thought was weakness was actually strength being refined. Do not rush past this moment. You are about to step into tomorrow with new eyes. If you let this truth settle, you will walk lighter. You will question less. You will trust yourself more. Not because you suddenly became flawless, but because you can finally see that you did not just endure. You grew. Stay with me. You passed the final test. And what comes next is not something you have to earn. It is something you are finally ready to receive. You passed the final test and you didn't even know it was happening. That is the part that still surprises you. You expected a moment that would announce itself. You expected clarity, a signal, some unmistakable sign that would tell you this matters. But it did not arrive with ceremony. There were no markers, no instructions, no visible finish line. It blended into your days. It looked like routine. It looked like fatigue. It looked like showing up without enthusiasm. It looked like staying when leaving would have been easier. That was the test. You assumed tests come with obvious stakes and clear outcomes. You expected something dramatic, something that would separate evaluation from everyday life. But the most defining tests are the ones that ask who you will be when nothing is promised and no one is watching. This one measured your heart, not your performance. It measured your trust, not your results. It measured your willingness to remain present when answers were slow and feelings were thin. And you passed. I saw you endure when you did not feel strong. I saw you trust when you did not feel sure. I saw you remain humble when frustration tempted you to harden. You questioned yourself. You doubted your progress. You wondered if anything you were doing mattered at all. But even in that uncertainty, you stayed honest. You did not pretend to be something you were not. You did not abandon your values just to feel safe. You did not trade truth for comfort. Those choices were the passing marks. You did not pass because you were perfect. You passed because you were faithful in small, unseen ways. You passed because you kept your heart open when disappointment tried to close it. You passed because you did not let cynicism become your shield. You passed because you kept listening, even when my voice felt quiet and prayer felt like effort instead of connection. Presence was your obedience, and presence mattered. There were days when you felt like nothing was happening, when progress felt invisible and hope felt fragile. You assumed you were standing still. But standing still in faith is not stagnation. It is endurance. It is the courage to remain where you are until clarity arrives. You did not run ahead. You did not force answers. You did not demand timelines. You stayed. And that staying formed a strength you could not have gained any other way. You thought the test was about how much you could handle. But it was also about how gently you could carry yourself while handling it. Would you become harsh with yourself? Would you let shame define you? Would you turn your questions into accusations? You learned patience with yourself. You learned how to name your limits without giving up. You learned how to rest without quitting. Those lessons did not feel like victory, but they were. I watched you obey quietly. Not with grand gestures, but with consistent choices. You chose integrity when no one would have noticed if you compromised. You chose kindness when bitterness would have felt justified. You chose restraint when reaction would have given you temporary relief. These were not loud decisions. They were internal. They were private. And they revealed your readiness more clearly than any public achievement ever could. There were moments when you thought you were failing because the struggle did not end quickly. But the length of a test does not determine failure. Sometimes length is what reveals endurance. You were being shown who you are when the finish line is not visible. You were learning how to live without constant reassurance. That is not easy. It requires trust that does not depend on feeling good or seeing results. You did not know this was the final test because final tests rarely announce themselves. They come after many others, quietly measuring what has been learned along the way. This one asked a simple question. Will you keep walking? Even when the path felt ordinary again. Even when excitement faded. Even when nothing felt new. And you did. Consistency is strength. I saw your unseen courage. I saw you resist the urge to numb yourself. I saw you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. I saw you choose reflection over distraction. Those choices refined you. They made you steadier, calmer, more aware. You are not the same person you were when this season began. You may not feel triumphant, but you are grounded. That is victory. You may wonder why I did not tell you sooner. Why I did not mark the moment with clarity or recognition. It is because recognition was not the reward. Formation was. You were being shaped, not applauded. If you had known it was a test, you might have performed. Instead, you lived honestly. That honesty is what qualified you. You passed because you did not abandon your values when they became inconvenient. You passed because you kept choosing truth over comfort. You passed because you remained teachable even when you were tired of learning the same lesson. You stayed connected to me, not perfectly but persistently. There were days you felt unseen. Days you questioned whether anyone noticed your effort. I need you to hear this clearly. I noticed. I counted every quiet victory. Every moment you chose not to give up. Every time you told yourself to try again tomorrow. Those moments were not small. They were the measure. This test did not ask you to prove your worth. It revealed it. It showed that your faith is not dependent on conditions. It showed that your character is not performative. It showed that you can be trusted with deeper understanding because you did not demand it prematurely. You waited. You endured. You stayed open. You may still feel tired. Passing a test does not always bring immediate relief. Sometimes it brings awareness. Awareness of how much you carried, awareness of how quietly strong you have become, awareness that something has shifted even if nothing looks different yet. That awareness is the beginning of rest. Release the belief that victory must be dramatic. Quiet victories change lives. Unseen strength lasts. You are standing here now because you passed something that would have broken you before. Not because you are invincible, but because you grew. You didn't even realize it was happening, but you were becoming someone who can be trusted with what comes next. You were learning how to walk without constant confirmation. You were learning how to listen without panic. You were learning how to remain present when outcomes were unclear. Those skills matter. I am telling you now because recognition belongs after formation, not before. You passed the final test. And what that means is not pressure, not expectation, not endless responsibility. It means readiness. It means trust has been built. It means the way forward will feel different, steadier, lighter, because you are no longer carrying the same uncertainty you once did. You did not just survive. You learned. You did not just endure. You matured. You did not just wait. You became. And I saw every step of it. I need you to hear this clearly because loneliness has a way of rewriting memories. It takes seasons of refinement and turns them into stories of rejection. It convinces you that distance meant disapproval, that silence meant absence, that being alone meant you were forgotten. That is not what happened. I did not ask you to walk alone because I wanted you isolated. I did not step back because you were unworthy of support. And I did not remove voices from your life because you were difficult to love. You were not abandoned. You were being prepared. There were people you expected to stand beside you who slowly drifted away. Conversations changed. Access shifted. Familiar support grew quiet. Some relationships ended without explanation. Others remained but no longer felt aligned. That hurt more than you wanted to admit. You questioned yourself. You replayed moments wondering what you did wrong. You wondered if being clearer, softer, quieter, or easier would have kept people close. But clarity was never the issue. Alignment was. Some people could only walk with you up to a certain point. Beyond that point, their presence would have required you to shrink, to over-explain, or to delay growth in order to keep the connection comfortable. I would not ask that of you. So space was created. And space is uncomfortable when you do not yet know what it is making room for. I needed you alone because you were learning to lean on something that could not disappear. For a long time, you drew strength from being understood, from being affirmed, from being surrounded. Those things are not wrong, but they are fragile foundations. They shift with moods, seasons, and circumstances. I wanted to build something steadier in you. Something that would not collapse the next time people misunderstood you or failed to show up the way you hoped. When voices around you grew quiet, it forced you to listen inward. When encouragement faded, it revealed what was truly sustaining you. When you felt misunderstood, it exposed how much you relied on being explained correctly to feel safe. That exposure was not meant to shame you. It was meant to free you. There were nights when the silence felt heavier than noise. When you sat with unanswered questions and felt the ache of being unseen. You wondered why reaching out felt harder, why connection no longer came easily, why comfort seemed distant. I know how deeply that cut. But silence is not empty when it is intentional. In that quiet, you were learning how to sit with yourself without judgment. You were learning how to be present without distraction. You were learning how to pray without performance. Your words became simpler. Your honesty grew deeper. Your need to impress faded. Those prayers reached me more clearly than ever before because they were real. You were no longer praying to be seen. You were praying to be held. I needed you alone because you were still confusing connection with dependence. Dependence feels like closeness, but it quietly erodes trust. In yourself and in me. You were learning how to stand without leaning too heavily on others to hold you upright. Not because you should never need support, but because support should add to your strength, not replace it. You were learning how to be supported without being sustained by approval. How to receive love without making it the foundation of your worth. That lesson can only be learned in seasons where external reassurance is thin. You felt misunderstood because you were changing. Growth often creates distance before it creates alignment. The language you were learning no longer matched the conversations around you. The questions you were asking did not fit familiar answers. That mismatch felt lonely. But it was also a sign that you were moving forward. Staying surrounded would have required you to stop growing. I would not ask that of you. I know you prayed for relief from the loneliness. I heard those prayers. And sometimes the answer was not the removal of loneliness, but meaning within it. Loneliness can feel empty, but it can also be clarifying. It reveals what you cling to. It shows you what you fear losing. It teaches you what truly sustains you when everything else is stripped away. I was with you in that season more closely than you realized. I did not fill the silence with noise because noise would have distracted you from what was forming. I stayed steady while you learned how to listen. You were learning discernment. Discernment grows best in quiet. It sharpens when there is less external influence pulling at your attention. When you are surrounded, it is easy to confuse consensus with truth. When you are alone, truth becomes clearer because it is no longer competing with noise. You began to notice what felt right instead of what was popular. You began to trust what settled your spirit instead of what pleased others. That shift mattered. There were moments you felt invisible, as though your absence did not matter to anyone. That pain went deep. But invisibility to people is not invisibility to me. Some of the most important shaping happens when there is no audience. When no one is watching, you discover who you are without performance. You learn how to choose integrity without applause. You learn how to keep going without validation. That kind of strength cannot be taught any other way. This season also taught you empathy. You now recognize loneliness in others without them saying a word. You understand silence without judging it. You listen differently because you know what it feels like to not be understood. That empathy will matter more than you know. It will shape how you love, how you lead, how you respond. I did not remove everyone from your life. I refined your circle. I allowed distance where closeness would have hindered growth. And I preserved connection where it could grow with you instead of holding you back. Refinement is not rejection. It is precision. You were not meant to stay alone forever. This was a season, not a sentence. But seasons have purpose. And the purpose of this one was to strengthen your foundation. You now know how to sit in silence without running from it. You know how to listen without panicking. You know how to trust without constant reassurance. Those are not small things. They are the marks of maturity. And they were formed when no one else could interfere with the work being done. I needed you to walk through that season alone so that when you walk with others again, you do so freely, not fearfully. You will no longer cling to be understood at the cost of your truth. You will no longer settle for connection that requires you to diminish yourself. You will choose relationships that meet you in honesty, not performance. You were not abandoned. You were refined. You were not forgotten. You were being prepared. You were not unsupported. You were being strengthened from the inside out. That is why what comes next will feel different. You will not need to grasp. You will not need to prove. You will walk with quiet confidence, knowing you can stand whether others walk beside you or not. I was with you every step, even when it felt like no one else was. And the strength you carry now is proof that the loneliness was never empty. It was sacred. While you were struggling, I was watching, but not for what you think. I was not counting how many times you felt strong. I was not measuring how quickly you recovered. I was not watching for perfection, confidence, or certainty. I was watching your heart. You assumed the struggle meant something was wrong. That if things were hard, you must be missing something, doing something incorrectly, falling behind. But the struggle was not evidence of failure. It was the setting where your readiness was being revealed. I was watching your posture more than your progress. Progress can be misleading. It can be rushed, forced, or performed. But posture, how you carry yourself when pressure builds quietly, tells the truth. When things did not move the way you hoped, did your heart harden or soften? When disappointment arrived, did you turn inward with honesty or outward with blame? When silence stretched longer than comfort allowed, did you run from it or sit with it? These were not small moments. They were the heart of the test. Readiness is not proven by speed. It is proven by posture. I was watching what you did in private, when no one was watching, when there was no reward for staying faithful, when showing up felt pointless. How did you live then? Did you stay true to who you were? Or did you begin to cut corners to ease the pressure? Did you speak to yourself with cruelty? Or did you learn how to show yourself grace? Did you abandon your values quietly because no one would notice? Or did you keep them because you would? Private choices shape public strength, and you chose integrity more often than you realize. I was watching how you handled frustration. Pressure reveals what lies beneath the surface. When effort did not bring results, when things felt unfair, when clarity refused to arrive, I watched what settled in your spirit. You felt frustration. You did not deny it. But you did not let it turn into bitterness. You did not let disappointment become identity. You did not let delay convince you that nothing mattered. You stayed open even when you were tired. That openness mattered. I was watching how you trusted, not whether you questioned. Questioning did not disqualify you. What mattered was that you did not let questions turn into accusations. You wrestled honestly. You asked why. You named confusion. But you did not close your heart. You did not decide that silence meant absence. You did not turn uncertainty into rejection. You stayed in relationship, even when understanding lagged behind. That is trust grown through experience, not assumption. I was watching how you handled temptation, not only the obvious kind but the subtle kind. The temptation to numb yourself. The temptation to distract endlessly. The temptation to become cynical. The temptation to stop caring because hope felt risky. You felt those pulls. You did not pretend you didn't, but you did not let them define you. You resisted becoming someone you would not recognize later. That restraint mattered more than dramatic resistance ever could. I was watching how you spoke when you were tired. Tired words reveal true beliefs. When exhaustion stripped away filters, did you speak despair over yourself? Or did you pause before letting discouragement take control? You were not always positive. I was not looking for that. I was watching whether you remained honest without becoming hopeless. You learned how to name pain without letting it become identity. That is maturity. I was watching your willingness to walk without answers. This mattered deeply. Could you keep moving gently forward without knowing exactly where the path led? Could you live with uncertainty without panicking? Could you trust timing instead of fighting it? You did not always feel confident, but you did not freeze. You kept moving with humility. That willingness told me you could be trusted with clarity later, because you did not demand it prematurely. I was watching how you treated others while you were hurting. Pain often narrows perspective. It makes people self-protective, impatient, harsh. You felt pain deeply, but you did not lose compassion. You still noticed others. You still cared. You still chose kindness even when you felt empty. That was not weakness. That was strength refined by humility. I was watching whether you tried to control outcomes or learn to release them. Control often disguises itself as effort, but underneath it is fear. You slowly learned that not everything could be managed by force. You learned how to let go without giving up. That shift was subtle but essential. It showed me that you were learning to trust timing instead of trying to dominate it. You thought you were being punished because things felt heavy. But punishment focuses on failure. What you experienced focused on formation. I was not asking whether you deserved something. I was watching whether you were becoming someone who could carry it without losing your peace. Readiness is not about talent. It is about stability. I watched how you handled your expectations. Expectations can motivate, but they can also crush when unmet. You learned how to loosen your grip on timelines you once held tightly. You learned how to live without guarantees. That flexibility was not surrender to defeat. It was surrender to trust. I watched how you returned after moments of doubt. Doubt did not disqualify you. What mattered was that you returned.